Assalamu alaikum, Sister Adila, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Zahir, thank you for having me on your show.
And thank you so much for joining us here. Very important topics, especially during the month of Ramadan. So, Sister Adila, during Ramadan, we often hear about couples experiencing intense arguments or emotional outbursts. Sometimes it can contribute to the hangriness in all of us. But why do you think these unresolved emotions tend to surface during this particular month? And what does this reveal about the underlying state of these relationships?
Okay, Zahir. So during Ramadan, all of us have set the intention, the niyat, to engage in more ibadat, right? So our spiritual expectations are heightened for ourselves. For example, I would say in this month, I need to complete my Quran. I need to read this many durood per day. I don't want any qaza, salat this month, etc., so on and so forth. And so if each individual sets an intention, we don't want to mess it up. We don't want to go against our own checklists that we've set and standards that we've set for ourselves for our spiritual well-being and our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here is where the downfall comes in. Whilst we have set these intentions for ourselves, we also tend to hold those close to us accountable to do the same. So we sort of now have this expectations of our husbands. I'm saying husbands because I'm the wife. If I'm awake for tahajjud, then you should be awake for tahajjud. Why are you sleeping until just before Seri or Fajr, you know? So then, as we all know, fasting is not a walk in the park, especially for men and children. And I say that with the utmost respect because it is a bit more challenging, especially if you're a smoker or if you vape or if you have a short temperament or if you're used to your lunchtime after Zohar Salah or your tea times. It proves to be much more difficult. And so this does lead to fatigue, to hunger, and of course, the disrupted sleep patterns and all of that. So all of this is definitely going to make us more emotionally reactive, both men and women. So since we are super vigilant and aware of our intentions and actions, because it is the month of Ramadan, we tune into our emotional states, and this certainly then exposes resentments, unspoken conversations, and unresolved conflict that one may be going through normally, but then it is much more apparent during the month of Ramadan. For example, throughout the year, husbands and wives may suppress their frustrations, not always, but most times, and practice more patience. Perhaps when one is upset or venting, this happens with the intention to keep the peace. Let it pass, let her carry on, let him carry on. But guess what? It stores an emotional baggage. Every situation, especially if it is something that happens often and it goes unresolved. So when you have enjoyed a nice lunch and you just finished a nice cool drink, for example, you're not necessarily going to react when there's an argument happening at home. You're able to regulate your emotions, or better yet, you just keep quiet. Does the problem go away? Absolutely not. It becomes suppressed frustration and unaddressed. It becomes suppressed frustration and unaddressed grievances. So in our relationship, we go through cycles of good behavior, cycles of bad behavior. This is the natural process, right? And it's predictable. It's only normal for this to happen in every marriage. But the danger zone applies when the bad cycles are not openly confronted when it needs to be. So we tend to have expectations of our partner during the month of Ramadan. That's the first part. Some people set some really unrealistically high expectations of each other. And when they are disappointed because it's not being met, guess what? That's when the conflict begins.
So do you think that sort of in Ramadan, it's sort of that emotional baggage that we sort of hung on to, now it becomes more apparent because of the mood swings that we get during the month of Ramadan, because of the change and adjustments in our routine? Of
course, and the change and the adjustment in the mind and the body that's taking place, because your body and mind is going through a detox.
Yeah.
So you become, all of your senses are extremely heightened, and you're paying attention to things that you may not necessarily pay attention to normally.
Sure. Okay. So now, when hurtful words are sort of exchanged during these fights, it's often brushed off as just anger. But you've mentioned that these words carry a deeper message. How can couples learn to listen to what's being communicated during these moments rather than dismissing it as temporary anger?
That's a very good question. And I can assure you that it's not just anger. So during a fight, if couples are arguing over the issue at hand, let's say, I'm going to give you a silly example. The wife sends a message to her husband during the day, reminding him, please, can you buy dhania for me? You know, right now, dhania is like gold. He gets home.
True story.
Yeah, he gets home. And of course, he doesn't bring the dhania. She goes off at him for forgetting. And then an argument ensues where he says, she sent the message too late. Why didn't you phone me? You know, I don't check my phone at work, etc. If the argument stays in that loop of events where they are focusing on the actual situation, then that is healthy, normal, and that's okay. So it's about the phone, it's about work, it's pertinent to that present situation. What is not okay is when things elevate and escalate very quickly. For example, she tells him, well, you cannot ever do anything right. I've been married to you for 15 years and you never did anything properly anyway. I don't even know why I listened to my parents and married you in the first place.
Sure, I'll turn around and run away.
So that's deep. So
Yeah,
there's deeper
that's hectic.
messages.
Yeah.
And for a husband to say, oh, she was just angry and let it pass, there are consequences to that later on in life. And it's vice versa for both the husband and the wife. So he responds even more angrier in the situation. He starts hurling insults. He starts saying despicable things to his wife to the point where maybe he might throw something on the floor or push a kitchen cupboard too hard and say things related to the past and how miserable he is. This is not just anger, Zahir. This is not just we had a bad day. This is reflections of a deeper emotional wound or wounds in this marriage, whether it is unacknowledged hurt on both parts, whether it's unmet needs, lingering resentment. There is something deeper going on in this marriage, and especially if it is recurring, the root causes have to be uncovered. So when we're angry, we're basically masking our true emotions of vulnerability. So when you're screaming at your partner, you're saying bad things, it's you masking your vulnerability, your sadness, your disappointment, your fear, or your shame. The anger is sometimes all someone knows as a default coping mechanism to survive in that situation or to protect themselves, because that's what you learned as a child. In order for me to protect myself or as a coping mechanism, I need to express anger. Words carry a much deeper message than what meets the eye, or should I say the ear. And in my practice, I listen to my clients quite attentively. And you know what, Zahir, through all of their words and explanations and detailed stories of their experiences and what they're going through, all I hear them saying is, I feel unappreciated, I feel neglected, or I feel unheard. And guess what? This isn't only from women. Men feel this way too, and rightfully so. If that's what you're feeling, you have a right to feel that. So all of the built up frustrations over a period of time, whether it is the wife, whether it's the husband, an eruption is highly likely, especially during Ramadan, when people's patience are wearing very thin.
So do you think that in the month of Ramadan, besides it being a test, it's a month of tests, So do you think this is sort of
And revelation.
a revelation in the process?
Indeed.
Eh?
Indeed.
Because that's sort of like you hear these very relatable stories and you hear it from other sources and stuff like this. So you've hit the nail on the head in that regard. So it seems like not everyone's alone in this.
Well, tell me, a person's not going to really now shout at her husband or him shout at her if we know tonight we're going to our favorite place for dinner. I'd rather keep quiet or he won't take us. Now it's Ramadan. We can't go anywhere.
So all the truth comes out.
I'd rather just say what I need to say.
So true, so true. So many couples also make up after these fights and sort of move on, but you've suggested that all may not be well. So how does unspoken resentment or unresolved anger build up over time, and what are the long-term consequences for the relationship if these issues are not addressed properly?
This is a very important question. I want to try and explain it in the way I know best. So each individual, all of us have some sort of trauma, whether it's from our childhood, our life, some sort of pain that we may have experienced, right? And that then creates a pain body within us. We all have a pain body. Some it would be grief, losing a parent, losing a child. Others it would be a divorce. Others it would be a really bad accident, or one parent left the home when they were younger, whatever it may be. That pain body, we can call it...
Is it called a childhood trauma? Is it similar or
well, that could be one of the causes for your pain body. You had childhood trauma. The pain body is almost like, I would say, like shaitan. Okay, but let's call it the dragon. And the dragon's fast asleep within all of us. And the dragon needs to refuel. And in order to refuel, it needs to feed off something that is extremely powerful that can give it the fuel it needs to be satisfied. So the pain body in couples, between husbands and wives, feed off each other. So when we haven't fought for very long, not unconsciously, nothing's happened. And the dragon inside the pain body is like, I need to feed. And so something erupts, in both of them. The soul consciousness is our place of purity. Allah consciousness, you don't want to hurt. Within our soul, we don't want to hurt anyone. You want to please your creator. You want to do everything right. You want to make your spouse happy. That's all the goodness in each one of us. The pain body, the dragon, needs to refuel. So the soul consciousness sort of steps aside and the dragon they feed off each other. So during that argument, he says the worst things to each other, so does she. It gets really ugly. And now they are both satisfied. They have refueled. So the dragon goes back into its dormant state and it goes back to sleep. And then the soul awareness comes back. And then an hour later, she feels bad or he feels bad and they reconcile. And all of a sudden they made up and you're wondering what's going on here. What's happening with this couple? So the refueling and going back into the dormant state, then people then reconcile and say, I forgive you, I'm fine with it. But they need to work on their pain bodies because there's going to be a recurring need to refuel again.
So wouldn't it say it's like a sort of like a toxic relationship to an extent?
Well, it depends on the severity of the issue. Like I said, there are certain issues which are natural and normal because too much of something is too much for anybody, right? No matter how happy we may all be in our relationships, you're bound to have issues. But when it gets to a point that is unbearable, and obviously there's signs and symptoms, people start researching. When you start researching, why is my spouse doing this? Then you know that's a red flag because that's not normal. So within each person, they will know when they've reached a point to say, this is not a normal functioning relationship. And it's up to them to then seek professional assistance or do something about it.
Okay. Well explained. Now, fasting can also be physically and emotionally taxing. So how does fasting impact our ability to regulate emotions, and what strategies can couples use to navigate these challenges without letting frustration or even anger take over?
That's a very difficult one, but again, we can work through it because fasting does lead to fatigue. It leads to low blood pressure. It leads to disrupted sleep because by the time you're finishing Tarawih, going to bed, waking up for Sehri, then Fajr, then dropping kids off school, everyone's routines are completely disrupted. So it does lower our emotional thresholds. So it makes an individual more prone to being irritable and to have the anger outbursts where they're not necessarily that type of person. Usually they calm people. So to counter these effects, plan simple, nourishing meals. I would start there. Choose consciously what you want to eat for iftar and for sehri, because what you put into the body makes a huge difference to how you behave. Not many people understand the link between the nutrition and the moods and how they are interconnected. So even scheduling rests throughout the day, even if you do it for 15 minutes in the day, you say, I'm taking time out just to isolate, find some time to nap, to read, to make zikr of Allah, to do, it's called breathing breaks, just to help release tension so that you do not have the accumulation of frustration. Another key strategy is proactive communication. If something is bothering you, agree on a calm time between the two of you. 3 days have passed and you both at each other say, okay, listen, on a Friday, at what time do you think it would be suitable for us to sit and have a chat? I'd like to address concerns. One thing I want to recommend is both cannot speak at the same time. They have to be active listening. So if you're making a decision to sit with your partner, give him, I'm going to say him, a chance to talk. Give him a chance to talk. Listen to what the person is saying and amicably try to resolve conflict. Do not cut each other off, whatever you do, because then you're back into the loop and the vicious cycle of resentment and disaster.
Okay, so listen properly. You have to listen properly in order to achieve some sort of common ground.
Because you guys just listen. I don't even think it's listening. It's just called shutting off.
Sure. Ramadan, sister. Have some mercy on us, at least. We try our best where we can. We all are built differently. But, children often witness these conflicts, even if parents think they've resolved things behind closed doors. So how does observing these patterns of conflict and reconciliation affect a child's emotional and mental well-being? And what lessons are they internalizing about relationships?
This is a very important question because in our unconscious states, we sometimes forget that children are listening, observing, watching our behaviors, and they learn the exact same behaviors. Many of us, the manner in which we behave, the manner in which we conduct our relationships, our belief systems, our filtering systems, everything that we do, our food choices, our clothing choices, are strongly dictated from things that we learned or observed from our own parents. And so whilst you may say we had an issue, but we made up, the child did not forget about the unresolved conflict. They absorb all of your emotional cues. And that these experiences then instill a belief system within them that conflict is part of relationships. Unresolved conflict is part of relationships. And once they embed this as a belief system into their subconscious mind, they would then grow up believing that in order for them to have successful relationships, conflict unresolved conflict needs to be a part of it, or anger outbursts followed by making up within 24 hours needs to be a part of it. So this can lead to increased anxiety and insecurity in your children over a period of time, because they internalizing these patterns as models as to how to express or suppress their emotions. For instance, if parents consistently resolve disputes through explosive arguments followed by superficial makeups, children will learn that conflict is destructive and inadequately resolved, potentially leading to difficulties in managing their own emotions, in their own friendships, or forming healthy relationships later on in life. They also will develop a tendency to either avoid conflict entirely, or they will become overly confrontational people, neither of which is conducive to long-term emotional well-being. So in essence, the way parents handle conflict, the way we manage our own marriages, teaches our children what trust means, what communication translates to, what empathy means. Critical ingredients for building resilient, nurturing relationships in their future. So there's a bigger picture. If you don't have kids, do what you need to do. If you have children listening, especially if they actually, you know what, today at all ages, they're very smart. You need to become a more conscious parent and a more conscious spouse.
Because they learn through observation, isn't it? And it's not just about the words, it's about the actions as well.
It's about the actions. They're not interested in what you say. They are looking at what you do.
Absolutely. So the segment is proudly brought to you by Adila Vahed, the life coach. So give us more background about your sort of life coach experience, just to enlighten the listeners, and how can we find you?
Okay, cool. So I've completed my master's in coaching. I'm now practicing as a life and leadership coach for the past 7 years. This will be my 8th year. I deal with emotional and mental health. I also do ear acupuncture for people that are suffering from anxiety and suffering from many other symptoms, and they're not sure how to help themselves. Ear acupuncture helps with that. I have my rooms in Musgrave in Durban. I see clients every day besides Friday, but it has to come through an inquiry, and then of course understand what exactly are you not comfortable with, what are your challenges, what do you need help with. Of course, if I feel that a client is not coachable and they require further intervention, I would then refer them out to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, whatever additional professional help they might need. So coaching is about coaching conversations. It's learning more about the client. You are the expert on your life. I can't tell you anything about your life because you know your life and who you are better than anything. My responsibility is to just be there to guide you through the process, identify your blind spots, ask you questions that you didn't think about before, and literally guide you to find resolution within yourself.
Awesome stuff. Sister Adila, thank you so much for joining us. On a side note, lighter note here, Brother Wahed is listening to the conversation. He says, "Salams, my wife worships me like a true husband," from Wahed. All right. And also Sister Farhana sends a shout out to her daughter-in-law, Hafsa, who's living in London, celebrates her birthday. SubhanAllah, I want to give a shout out to her as well. So thank you so much to all of you interacting with us. Tomorrow's